Go they follow you they go. This year, good news, giant plenty money. Go they follow you they go. Everything I've been wanting, manifesting for my life. Everything you've been wanting, manifesting for your
WRSV, Elm City.
Turn up.
Choice FM.
You whenever y'all are.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Happy Monday, everyone. This is James Gailliard. I'm your host. Welcome to the James Gailliard Show. We're live every Monday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and share this. We are live right here on Choice FM. I love choicefm.com, the People Station, 92.1 FM on your dial. We're talking to people all the way from Roanoke Rapids and Tarboro and Rocky Mountain, Wilson, Raleigh, Durham. And so shouting all of you out. Let us know where you're listening from or where you're watching from. Go ahead and share this if you would on YouTube. Share it on Facebook. And I'll be checking comments at the break like I always do. I don't have a lot of topics today, but I want to go deep a little bit. I want to talk a little bit, of course, presidential politics like I do every week. If you're new to the show, we like to talk about things that are controversial. We want to talk about things that are going to make us better as a community. We want to talk about things that's going to enable people to thrive. Not just some people, but all people. Hey, watch any kind of politics, any kind of public policy, any kind of agenda item that results in only a select group of people thriving. We want to see everyone get across the finish line. At least we want to give everyone equal opportunity to stand at the starting line. Did you hear that? Everybody doesn't get across the finish line. I recognize that. You know, the Bible says the poor will be with you always, right? We recognize that there are some challenges that we have in our society and everyone doesn't get across the finish line. But I fundamentally have a problem when we don't even give people the opportunity to get to the starting line. Or when we put them at the starting line, their starting line is significantly further back than other people's starting lines. And so what we like to do is talk about the things that are going to move us all forward. I'm always talking politics. I'm always talking religion because I think it is ridiculous that we are told not to talk about those two things because those are the two things that impact our lives more than anything else. And so we recognize that we can't entertain ourselves to a better way of life. We have to educate ourselves to a better way of life. I'll be checking out your comments. Please go ahead and share this. This is the James Gailliard Show. I'm James Gailliard, and I want to jump right in today. Let me just say this. I don't do this often. Not that I shouldn't say I don't do it. I do this as often as is necessary. I'm not one of those people that has an inability to admit when I'm wrong. And so I was wrong on the vice presidential pick. As you know, if you've been watching or listening to me, I thought the Democratic vice presidential pick, I thought it was going to be Senator Mark Kelly. It was between he and Josh Shapiro, Governor Josh Shapiro. I did not have Governor Tim Walz on my bingo card. Okay, let me just be very honest. I did not see that coming. So I want to spend a little bit of today's show on a deep dive about him so that we can better understand the rationale of the pick, some things about him, a lot of good things, a few things that concern me, but overall, thrilled about the pick. I do want to, before I jump into a Tim Walz conversation, and then I want to shift from a Tim Walz conversation on the back half of our show to talk a little bit about the Olympics. The Olympic closing ceremony was yesterday. And I'm sure lots of us, I grew up, I don't know about you, but I grew up watching the Olympics. It was something that my family and I did. We did it as a family. My mom wasn't a big sports buff, but she would sit there with my father and I. And we always watched the Winter Olympics and the Summer Olympics. It was a big deal. And so I still enjoy the Olympics. I enjoy certain sports more than others, and I'll talk a little bit about that in this segment as well. So let's just talk about where things have gone from the election perspective. It's just been a total upending of the race. I mean, we have gone from looking as if former President Donald Trump was going to run away with this election to him now but being behind in all the polls. And so the most recent polling has Vice President Kamala Harris with a 51%, 48% lead over President Trump. That is 4 points better than when Harris got into the race. So that's a big deal. She has been able to maintain a 3-point lead when third-party choices are offered. And we're going to talk in future shows about the third-party candidates. I struggle. You know, I served as a Democrat in North Carolina General Assembly for 2 terms. Before that, I was always independent. And so I was never an affiliated a voter, Democrat or Republican. I was always unaffiliated. And I was able to vote either way, as unaffiliated people can do in the primary, and then, of course, whoever I wanted to, of course, in the general election. And I've struggled for many years with our 2-party system and the way that we run campaigns in our country. And so I say that because when these third-party candidates are out there, I get it because everyone has a right to run. But I think if you're in it only to play the part of the spoiler, then I don't think that you're in it for the right reasons. I think when Joe Biden was still in the race, Democrats were going to be hurt more severely by third-party candidates. I think now that Kamala Harris is in the race, I think that Republicans are also going to be hurt. And so according to the most recent polling, she remains a 3-point lead when a third-party candidate is being offered. Let's talk about why she's so popular right now. And there are basically 4 groups of people. Well, really 3. 3 groups of people that are really making the difference right now in the polling of the presidential race. Those 3 groups of people are black voters, and that's largely my audience on our show. The second group is white women with college degrees. And then the third group are women who identify as political independents. And so what is astounding is that she is maintaining somewhere between a 20 and a 30-point lead than when she first got into the race. So and I would also say that leading in this category are people that live in the suburbs. And she is improving with white voters overall. So I love that because, you know, you've already heard my perspective on race as it relates to this race. I'm going to talk about more of that in the future. But it thrills me that we have white dudes for Kamala, and we've got, you know, white suburban women for Kamala, and we've got all of the above because at the end of the day, I think this is really much more about race. This is really about the direction that we want our country to go in. And so I want to talk about that from a policy or a position perspective, the issues or issue perspective. Some of the issues that keep surfacing are, of course, immigration. And I've told you some of the internal polling that we've had here in Eastern North Carolina don't really hold up the immigration. And remind me by the end of the show to say something about just the way we're putting out mailers. And, you know, my staff are supposed to have a TikTok out for me, I think, last week, just talking about this issue. So be on the lookout for something from me. But so remind me to talk about how we message so poorly in the Democratic Party. And you know me, I'm just going to call it straight. I'll probably have some people call me and say, yeah, you can't be saying that on air. I'm going to always say it. I'm going to tell the truth. I think if we're going to hurt ourselves anywhere as Democrats, it's because we still don't know how to message. So let's talk a little bit about the messaging side. Immigration is still polling high. It is Harris is also seeing improvement on how she would handle immigration. But Donald Trump is still more trusted on the immigration issue. I think if we would just be honest that we need immigration reform. But I think part of what is destroying our nation, and I know, I think a big cause of the toxicity that goes on is the extremity that goes on the far right and the far left. I think if we can just get both those groups totally out of politics, we could have some nice things. I think there's a better shot at getting the far left under control than there is the far right. And the reason I say that is because the far left has not taken over the Democratic Party, but the far right has absolutely taken over the Republican Party, and they've lost their mind. These MAGA Republicans are just, to use the words of our new vice presidential pick, they're just weird. And so on the immigration side, she's gaining ground, but it suggests that Donald Trump is more trusted in that issue. On the economy, Trump is still more trusted, but he only has a 3-point lead in that area. Compare that to a 9-point lead that Trump had over Biden on economic issues. And from a perspective of abortion, of course, Harris is considered better to handle that issue. And this is where on the polling, it's a big deal. She has a 15-point advantage, on the issue of abortion. And so let's jump into the vice presidential pick. I want to begin, before I do a deep dive on the Democratic nominee for vice president, I want to first of all begin with something so that we understand the process. And so obviously she has to vet candidates, right? No different than Donald Trump would have to vet candidates. And if I were preaching on Sunday, I would say, just stick with me because I'm going somewhere. And so the Democratic vetting team, or the Kamala Harris vetting team for the vice presidential pick, was led by campaign chair Jen O'Malley Dillon. And then by campaign chief of staff Sheila Nixon and former Attorney General Eric Holder and former White House counsel Dana Remus, and these are all counsel, and then Tony West, who is Harris's brother-in-law and a former top official in the Department of Justice. Her family is very impressive. Just want to say that. Her sister, Maya, really, really brilliant attorney. I want to say Stanford trained. So she has get that group of people. This is because one of the things that I want us always thinking about is we have to think bigger than Donald Trump, Kamala Harris. We must think Donald Trump administration, Kamala Harris administration. And even for those people that might possibly be on the fence, once you start digging deep into who will be in their administration, you get off the fence. So when you talk about a person who knows how to surround themselves with good people, you're talking about former Attorney General Eric Holder, former White House counsel Dana Remus, and Tony West. Tony West is a former official in the Department of Justice. These are the people that are just vetting whoever the Democratic candidate for VP is going to be, right? Now, what happens is they meet with all these candidates over a Zoom meeting, right? So they met with Waltz, they met with Shapiro, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. And listen, let me just say this. I don't know that the Democratic Party has a better communicator on the issues than Pete Buttigieg. I personally think the only reason Pete Buttigieg was not tagged is because he's a gay man. If he was a man that was heterosexual, not homosexual, I think Pete Buttigieg is tagged because he's just super bright. He understands the issues. He understands municipalities and cities, which would be helpful because he was a mayor of a city. He understands government agency because he heads up federally the Secretary of Transportation. And he's just smart and he knows the issues. But it's no way America is in the social climate that we could handle a president that was a woman of color and a vice president who was gay. Like that's just, and we have to own where we are and where we aren't as a nation. I personally think that's the only reason Pete Buttigieg was not tagged. And then Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, and so they met with that group, and then they ended that group, and then Eric Holder and Dana Remus put together their findings for a panel of Harris confidants. So then they go, okay, this is what we think should happen. It goes to people she deeply trusts. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh, one of her advisors, Cedric Richmond, former Congressman Cedric Richmond, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto of Nevada. They then interview the candidates. After they interview the candidates, then it starts getting passed on to the next level. So now they add Harris's White House Chief of Staff, who's Lorraine Voles, and they start having a deeper conversation. By the time that is over, it's dwindled down to three people: Shapiro, Kelly, and Waltz. They're all invited to the Naval Observatory for a one-on-one meeting with Harris, and this is where I want to go, y'all. It's called the chemistry test, because at the end of the day, if you don't have chemistry, if you don't work well together, then it doesn't matter how bright you are and all the other things. So I just rattled off to you all of these major players that were a part of informing her decision about who her candidate, her vice presidential pick would be. Now, this is where I'm going with this. It is important that you know who to side with, that you know who to have as a confidant. It is important, particularly in political circles, that we understand who the people are that are going to have our ear. So one of the reasons why, if you know, let's put aside all of the issues that we know matter. Let's put aside race. Let's put aside gender. What I want to submit to us for talking points today is that I want to vote for the candidate that knows how to surround themselves with the right people, that know how to surround themselves with people that are competent, that know how to surround themselves with people that have integrity and goodwill and good intentionality and good motives. So I just rattled off to you a list of people that Vice President Kamala Harris has surrounded herself with so that she could make the most informed vice presidential pick. Now, put that over on this corner. Let's go on over to the Republican corner. Let me read a list of people that Donald Trump has surrounded himself with and what those people are currently doing. And so, Steve Bannon, sentenced to 4 months in prison in 2022 for contempt of Congress after defying a subpoena for the January 6th Select Committee. Peter Navarro, the former Trump advisor, sentenced to prison after being convicted of contempt of Congress and defying a subpoena from the January 6th Select Committee. These are people close to, so I'm showing you the difference between the kind of people Kamala picks and the kind of people Trump picks. Michael Cohen, Trump's one-time personal lawyer, sentenced to 3 years in prison in 2018 after pleading guilty to an array of crimes, including violating campaign finance laws and lying to Congress in the Mueller investigation. Paul Manafort, Trump's former campaign chairman, sentenced to 7.5 years in prison for bank and tax fraud crimes and those related to his work as a political consultant in Ukraine. He spent under 2 years in prison before ultimately being pardoned by Trump in 2020. George Papadopoulos, the former Trump campaign advisor, sentenced to 2 weeks in prison for lying to investigators about Russian contacts. He ultimately served 12 days in prison, and he received a pardon by Donald Trump. Listen, let me get it. Roger Stone, longtime Trump associate, sentenced to more than 3 years in prison in 2020 for crimes that included obstruction of justice, lying to Congress, and witness tampering. Guess what? Trump commuted Stone's sentence in July 2020 and pardoned him. See some themes here? Deputy chairman of Trump's 2016 campaign, Rick Gates, pled guilty in 2018 to conspiracy and lying to the FBI, later sentenced to 45 days in prison. Alan Weisselberg, the former Trump Organization chief financial officer, received 5 months in prison on April 10th after previously pleading guilty to 2 counts of perjury. The charges stem from Weisselberg's giving false testimony during Trump's civil fraud trial. It was the second prison sentence that Weisselberg received, as he was given another 5-month sentence last year for his role in helping run listen to this, a years-long tax fraud scheme. I'm not done. More than 1,230 people. For those of you just tuning in, I'm James Gailliard. This is the James Gailliard Show. And what I'm doing is talking about the importance of surrounding ourselves with quality human beings. The importance of understanding the difference between voting for Kamala Harris and voting for Donald Trump versus voting for a Kamala Harris administration versus voting for a Donald Trump administration. The question becomes, who has a track record with surrounding themselves with the right people? Because recognize, the reality is when you get to be the leader of the free world, when you get to be CEO of something, at the end of the day, you're only as good as the people around you, because there's only so much we can do as individuals. You surround yourself with people that are lazy, that are incompetent, that don't have integrity, that don't have work ethic, that don't have good intentionality, then the whole ship goes down. So my argument so far on today's show is that you have one candidate in Kamala Harris who is knocking it out the park and who she surrounds herself with. You have another person in Donald Trump who person after person after person lacks integrity. They lie, fraud people. Listen, I'm not done. More than 1,230 people have been charged with federal crimes in the riot on January 6th, ranging from misdemeanor offenses like trespassing to felonies like assaulting police officers and seditious conspiracy. Of those 1,230 people, 730 of them have pled guilty to charges. Another 170 of them have been convicted of at least one charge. And so, y'all, what I'm trying to get you to see, of that 750 people that have been sentenced, 750 have been sentenced, almost 2/3 receiving some time behind bars, prison sentences ranging everywhere from a few days to up to 22 years. These are the kind of people that Donald Trump surrounds himself with. Birds of a feather. And so when we begin looking at this election, when you begin looking at local elections, when we begin looking at statewide elections, our judicial races, our council of state races, our gubernatorial race, attorney general, all of the president, we have to ask ourselves not just simply what are the policy positions. Of course they matter. We'll talk about that. We're going to always talk about that. But family, listen to me. It doesn't matter how good the stock market is if I go to jail because I cheated the system. It doesn't matter how much money I make as a CEO if I go to jail because I figured out ways to circumvent paying my taxes. It doesn't matter what position I've risen to if I disrespect and disregard people of the opposite sex. And I don't. It's amazing to me that we literally act as if integrity doesn't matter anymore. We act as if the quality of a human being just doesn't matter anymore. I would much rather have a person of integrity in the White House that I disagree with on how to handle immigration than I do someone in the White House who I agree with on how they handle immigration, but I can't trust that they'll do it in a way that's going to be consistent with our Constitution and the laws of the land. So that becomes the fundamental difference that we're just not talking enough about, the issue of integrity. And so, listen, I'm James Gailliard. It's the James Gailliard Show. I'm right up on my first break. I'm going to check out all of your comments. When we come back, listen, pass this on, share it with someone. We're talking about how people surround themselves with quality people, who does and who does not. When we come back, I'm going to give you a whole litany of things to know about the VP pick, Governor Tim Walz. And then after that, we're going to have a little fun, talk about the Olympics. Share this. This is James Gailliard, James Gailliard Show, Choice 92.1 FM. I'll be right back.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM. Visit safevoternc.org. Our communities, our issues, our future. It's time to bring politics closer to the people. Your vote brings politics back to what matters. Us. Be the change you want to see. Learn how your vote impacts our daily lives. And let's make politics work for us. Visit safevoternc.org for your credible election resources.
Get ready to laugh till you drop. Eddie Griffin, the comedy legend, is taking over the Raleigh Improv this Friday and Saturday. 4 shows that'll have you cracking up all night.
Give me a redneck any day. I'd rather have a redneck on the front line with me. If I gotta go somewhere, that redneck will be right there. What the hell we gonna do, boy? Damn, this is urban warfare. You grew up in the hood. What block are they coming from?
1224 Parkside Main Street in Cary. He's the king of comedy, honored by Comedy Central as one of the top 100 greatest stand-up comedians of all time. Don't miss the fun. Grab your tickets now at improv.com. Eddie Griffin at the Raleigh Improv. Be there or hear about it forever.
Have you been injured in an auto accident or injured on the job? I'm Nicole Cotton with the Cotton Law Firm. Choose the Cotton Law Firm. We'll use our 15 years of experience to get you the results you deserve.
Pick Cotton at cottonlawfirm.com.
We're no softies.
Locations in Fayetteville, Durham, now in Rocky Mount. Serving injured parties in all 100 counties of North Carolina. Cottonlawfirm.com. That's cottonlawfirm.com. Hablamos
The
Español.
People Station, Choice FM 92.1, extremely cold, and I'm kicking it with Queen, Cousin Kira.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you for coming in. We have listeners with great credit who still are looking for cars. They don't know what they want. What should they do, good credit or bad credit?
They gotta call me first because the problem is dealerships are known for being dishonest. And when you need an honest answer before you sign a dotted line and you have that small print that nobody reads, you need to understand what this looks like. So any dealership anyone goes to, regardless of credit, they only have to sell you a car that is safe. It has to pass a safety inspection. The Carfax, the information that you get stuck with for the next, 6 years of a loan, they don't care, but I actually do. So I want them to call me so we can give them the good answers, the good information. They make an educated decision and they get a fair deal.
Cousin Kira, make sure you give us the number so everyone can reach you. Give us the website too.
919-275-5372, and that spells out Ask Kira. And then you can go to www.askcousinkira.com.
AskCousinKira.com. Make sure you let them know the People Station sent you.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Early and whatnot on the show. James Gailliard, welcome back to the James Gailliard Show. We are talking about politics again today, but specifically the issue of integrity. I can't underscore this enough. And I want to shift the conversation some. Listen, I'm on the bandwagon, or I shouldn't call it the bandwagon because sometimes I don't like the band or the wagon, right? So I don't want to call it the bandwagon, but I do want to hear substantive policy positions from Kamala Harris. Let me be very clear about that. And so I'm not suggesting at all that policy positions don't matter. What I am suggesting is that policy positions are not as important as issues of integrity and fidelity. And I think, even as a pastor, there are certain pastors that I just don't associate with. It's not that, they may have nice-sized churches and they might be very successful in their own right, but then if there's certain things attached to them, like I'm not trying to be associated with that. I mean, it's the reason why we post our audited financials on our church website for everyone in our congregation and the public to see, because we just want to live as much as possible beyond the scrutiny. Like we want people to see us in a way that we have integrity. And that's what I tried to show you on the first part of the show. Donald Trump, in his first term in office, I believe will be his only term in office, literally surrounded himself with people that were just like him. And so it's amazing to me that particularly evangelical Christians can look past issues of integrity. And I want us to really be more mindful of that in our politics. And so let's not forget to raise that issue. I see your comments, putting money before your morals. Brenda Jenkins says integrity, and I saw Q's comment, and LaShawn's comment as well. And so I'm just trying to simply get you to see that one person has a track record of criminal activity and fraudulent behavior. I want to say that again. A track record of criminal activity and fraudulent behavior. And there is not a scenario in which just because, you mean to tell me that just because I might wind up spending 15 or 20 cents more, maybe not, that I might wind up spending 15 or 20 cents more for a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread, that I should look beyond the fact that you have no integrity, that you have a track record in dividing people, that you have a track. So let me move on. Y'all, so let's talk about Tim Walz. The question is, hey, G, what you think about the pick? I was wrong. I started the show by saying, hey, listen, I did not have Tim Walz on my bingo card. I did not see that coming. I listened to their speech, their campaign speech in Philadelphia that night or that day or the next day. I literally stood up twice in my office while Tim Walz was speaking. I loved it. I loved him, what I heard from him. I want to tell you why I think he's a good pick. I want to tell you some things about him that you may or may not know. I don't want to go in any particular order with this, but it's easy to have a group of people governing us that are nothing like us. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that with J.D. Vance and with Donald Trump. I'm amazed, and I don't say this in a way to look down upon any group of people. I need you to hear this, okay? I need you to hear this. I'm from the hood. I grew up in a row house in North Philadelphia. My parents were probably lower middle class, I would say, at best. And a big chunk of high school, both my parents were unemployed. We had winters where we ran out of heat. We were on food stamps for a while. So I don't say what I'm about to say in a way of looking down on any group of people. But it defies the mind when a person is living in a single-wide trailer home sitting on cinder blocks with a window air conditioned and maybe 2 other windows boarded up, and they've got this $100 Trump 2024 flag flying. A man who lives in penthouses and flies private jets. Like, in what world do you think he even knows you exist? It's crazy to me. And so I have found, politically speaking, even in being in the General Assembly, you had a group of people, a lot of attorneys. That's a whole nother conversation we need to have. Lee Roberts as the new permanent chancellor for UNC. Somebody remind me to talk about that on the upcoming show. But you had I lost my train of thought that quick. But being in the General Assembly, I saw people that could not connect with their constituents at all. They had nothing in common with them. This is exactly what you see with the Republican ticket. They have these 2 multimillionaires with Ivy League degrees. What do they share with you, America? Other than love of money and hatred of people of color and disrespect of women. That'll be the 3 things. I used to narrow it down to 2. That the only 2 type of people that, in my opinion, could vote for Donald Trump would be either people that are racist or just capitalists. They just have a love for money and they only care about the money. But I think I'm going to add sexist to that. So I think you either have to hate women or want them to be subservient. You have to love money and are willing to make it at any cost, or you just don't want to see people of color get to the starting line. I think those are the 3 groups of people that the current Republican Party is appealing to. So let's talk, about Tim Walz. Born in Nebraska, small little town in Nebraska, like 3,000 people. Raised in even a smaller town than that. Went to public school. It may not sound like a big deal, but where my public school? Most of the people voting in this election went to public school. And yet oftentimes we are electing people who went to private schools, and I'm not knocking the private school education. What I'm saying to you is that representation matters. We saw that in the Olympic Games, right? We saw situations. People of different religions, people of different nations and nationalities. And so grew up, went into the Army National Guard when he was 17. He enlisted, and his father dies of lung cancer when he's 19. Let me tell you about how our life situations form what we think about things. According to the VP pick, he says his dad was a school administrator. His dad died of lung cancer when he was 19 years old. And he says, I want you to hear this. The last 7 days of his father's life took his mother 10 years. She had to go back to work and work for 10 years to pay off the hospital debt. that was created by her husband dying of lung cancer in 7 days. So when you hear that, don't you think he is going to fight for good health care? If that's your perspective, if that's what you grew up seeing, do you really think this is going to be... Now, put on our thinking caps, people. So then, who will not vote for Tim Walz? The CEO of Blue Cross won't. The CEO of Vidant Healthcare System won't. And I'm not afraid to call y'all out. Just, you want to challenge me on it, come sit down with me in the studio. But people that make $300, $400, $500 million a year as hospital CEOs, people that make millions of dollars a year with incentives as CEOs and CFOs of healthcare providers, of health insurance agencies, they're not going to vote. They're the ones funding big dollars behind other campaigns. Because here's a guy who said, we got to fix our healthcare system in this country. It took my mother 10 years to pay off some debt because my dad was sick and she was just trying to save her husband. These are the kinds of issues of morality that we need to be thinking about, right? He went to a state college, not an Ivy League institution. He went to a state college. All these state universities we have in North Carolina. So this is like picking a person that didn't go to Harvard, Princeton, or Yale, but somebody that went to like the Fayetteville State, somebody that went to UNC. So he goes to Chadron State College. Then he gets a master's degree in educational leadership from Minnesota State University. State colleges, state universities. Spends a year in China, speaks fluent Mandarin. Shout out to all my Mandarin-speaking people. My daughter, JC, speaks fluent Mandarin. I think that's awesome. And so he went to China on a government-sanctioned group of American educators. And they went to teach Chinese high schools, went to teach in Chinese high schools, right? He taught on a reservation. Rose to the rank of sergeant major before he retired after 24 years in the military. He and his wife meet. Where are my teachers right now? He and his wife meet while they are both temps in the classroom. So he's a temp, his wife is a temp in a public school. They wind up eventually moving to Minnesota. They wind up still both teaching in Minnesota. He teaches geography, coaches the high school football. Like, the reason he's such a good choice is because he is America. He's just a dude that's like everybody else. I'm going to tell you more stuff about him. We want people. Let me ask you this. This is real talk, and this is how I want us thinking about politics. I want you to think about the things you deal with every day. And I want you to have these conversations at the barbershop, at your lunch break. Think about the things that you deal with every day. And this is the question I want you to answer. Which person on my ballot has the greatest likelihood of understanding this issue that I'm dealing with? Do they have people around them with experiences like mine? Have they had experiences like mine? And so, how many of you have been handed over a multi-million-dollar company? How many of you have been handed over, you have people in Silicon Valley fund you with opportunities in the tens of millions of dollars? That's what you're dealing with a Republican ticket right now. So, but how many of you went to public school? How many of you had your life changed by a teacher? How many of you had your life changed by a football coach, a basketball coach? Right? So this begins, and then, I mean, you would think, dude, that, he hunts. I'll talk about that in a minute. Family guy, teacher, football coach, a military veteran, and they start the Gay Straight Alliance. This is back in 1999. And y'all know, like, I'm not fighting with y'all about this whole gay, lesbian, LGBTQ plus plight. Like, I refuse to make it the premier issue. I refuse to make, this is just James Gailliard talking. I refuse to make abortion the premier issue. I think there are other issues that I connect better with and that are important to me and I'm passionate about. What I'm telling you is, for a white male heterosexual in 1999 to volunteer to be a faculty advisor for a group of students in high school who are coming out. They are beginning the Gay to Straight Alliance. I mean, that's something. That's good stuff. He has 2 children. Both his children were conceived through in vitro fertilization. They went through fertility treatments. That's a major issue that's on the campaign trail. We'll talk about that in the future. Got his political start. Listen, for those of you just jumping in, go ahead and share this. I'm James Gailliard, and this is the James Gailliard Show. And I'm talking about the vice president's pick, the president's pick, or the vice president, Kamala Harris's pick for her running mate for vice president. And I'm talking about some things that you should know about him and why that I think that he will proven to be a good choice. And then he gets elected into Congress. Let me tell you why he runs for Congress. I so connect with this because, like, I never had a thought of running for public office until a public education issue hit here in Eastern North Carolina, and I went to advocate about the whole issue of the merger. And then my then sitting state representative, after me traveling up there 3 or 4 consecutive days, and I finally got a chance to go into his office. I had never met him, and I just wanted to share my position and see what we could do to move this issue forward so it would be good for all the students, both in Edgecombe and in Nash County. Because, by the way, can I throw this in for free? If you only care about some of the students, then you don't care about any of the students. Like, as a parent, as an educator, for me as a pastor, and public education is probably that, and healthcare is probably, and economic equity are probably the 3 things that I might care most about. Listen, if you're not, as a pastor, I want to see all children prosper. I want to see all children have an opportunity. I want to see children that are in public schools, charter schools, private schools, religious schools, home schools. Like, I want to see every child advocate for it. I want to see every child have an opportunity. I want to see every child being in schools that are properly funded with a responsible curriculum, with a qualified and quality principal, with qualified and quality educators in every classroom. Like, I want to see that. And so that's my issue with the voucher movement. That's my issue with it. People are like, you anti-vouchers. No, I'm anti-cherry picking who gets to go to the starting line. That's what I'm anti. And so I don't trust you. If you are a politician, if you are an educator, and all you care about are the children in one specific environment or situation, I don't think you are trustworthy enough to be an educator. And I don't trust you with kids. That's just James Gailliard talking. So back to Tim Walz. So he takes a group of kids to John Kerry's, former Massachusetts Senator John Kerry's presidential campaign, and they give them a hard time getting in. The Republican campaign that was against John Kerry. They have a hard time getting in. They give him a hard time, and he's like, "Man, kids should have the opportunity to see whatever candidate they want, whether they're Republican or Democrat." And the kids were like, "You should run for Congress. You should run for Congress." And he runs, and he winds up winning. It was one of the biggest upsets because it was a real, a deeply Republican, deep red district. He winds up winning it. He winds up one of the highest ranking people to serve in the U.S. House. Then he winds up defeating a person that overspends him by $500,000. He winds up winning re-election 5 more times in the most rural conservative district in Minnesota. And then, of course, he eventually winds up becoming governor, and now having served 2 terms as governor. And listen, he is a lot more left as governor than he was in Congress. In Congress, he was real bipartisan, which says to me he understands his different climates and environments. He's a hunter. I mean, he checks all the boxes. And so I think he's going to wind up being an excellent choice. He has some of his policies, universal school meals. He signed a universal school meals policy. Listen, say what you want to say. Children cannot learn while their stomach is growling because they're hungry. And instead of barking, I want to say another word, but instead of barking about whether or not we should be providing school lunches for kids, we should care enough about the kids to figure out a way to provide the school lunch. Every parent is not in a position to pack their lunch, to buy the food to pack their lunch. I mean, we can be so entitled. It's mind-boggling to me. We can have so much that we don't even realize what what other alternatives there are. Let me just say this. All you hypercritical people, just because you have a refrigerator to keep the lunch meat cold does not mean every child in that classroom has a refrigerator to keep their lunch meat cold. So instead of casting judgment upon why we need to provide lunches, why don't you realize the fact that not every child is in the same situation? And the objective ought be to get every child to the starting line so they can finish. But if they can't ever go to school because they're never having anything to eat, just because you have the ability to cook in an oven tonight does not mean everyone that goes to your child's school has an oven. And if they do have an oven, it doesn't mean that the electric is on or the gas is on. And so what I like about this pick for vice president is that he's lived through enough of the scenarios to get the plight of America. You know, if you think for a moment the single biggest problem we've got is whether or not gas prices inch up, next time you get that concerned about gas prices going up, park one of the cars and just drive one of them and map out your routes for the week. Instead of jumping in the car every day, going to the same place 10 times. So you know what? I'm going to go one time so I can use less gas. I'm going to plan my routes. I'm going to have somebody ride with me so we're all not burning gas. Because we keep buying gas, it's going to keep going up. That's how supply and demand works. But we're so caught up in issues that we think matter when the reality of it is there are deeper issues at stake. So he signs the universal school meals plan and then... because he says kids are eating and having full bellies so they can go learn. And then he says, and women can make their own healthcare decisions. And so, you know, listen, y'all know I'm pro-life Democrat, right? I want to find a way to protect life in the womb and in the world. But you don't protect life in the womb by stripping people of their rights. That you don't do. There are other ways to protect life in the womb. I hadn't planned on going here, but you protect life in the womb by making sure when the child is born, they're going to have actually an opportunity to get to the finish line, the starting line, so they can finish. So you can protect life in the womb to make sure that maternal child care is good enough for that black woman that she's not going to die trying to give birth. You can protect life in the womb by making sure that she has a livable wage equal to a man that's doing the same job with the same education. We can protect life in the womb by making sure that when that child grows up to go to a public school, that public school is going to be properly funded. We can protect life in the womb by making sure that if that child is born, when that child is born, that child won't live in a community that will make them food insecure. We can make sure they have clean water, clean air to breathe. It's lots of ways to do that. And so I think Dems are on the right side of the issues. And so that's Tim Walz. You know, those are the things that you know, he believes in. He did legalize recreational marijuana, you know, recently, about a year or so ago. I think that's jumping the gun, but I don't think that makes him a bad legislator because you got to recognize, or a bad governor, you got to recognize the state he's in. He's in Minnesota. It's very liberal there. Beautiful state, by the way. Let me tell you where I am on marijuana. I am on, first of all, the very first thing we should be doing is decriminalizing it. That's number one. Like, I think we go too fast. And so I don't believe in full-blown legalizing recreational marijuana. I think that's too fast. And I'm not saying that one day we don't get there. I say, number one, if we're having conversation about whether or not to legalize, say, medical marijuana, if I'm having that conversation that I know that there are some values to it, which means the first thing I need to do is decriminalize it. Like, I need to get everybody out of jail who's in jail because of marijuana. So I think number one is we decriminalize it. I think number two, we legalize medical marijuana. And then we wait and see. You know, so, but that's Minnesota, right? That, to me, that's not a reason not to vote for a guy. He's former chairman of Democratic governors. Just talking about Tim Walz. For those of you that are just joining, I'm James Gailliard. This is the James Gailliard Show. I'm going to look at your comments in just a moment. We're talking about the VP pick, why he got chosen, why I think he's a good pick. He's just a good old boy, and I don't mean that in a negative way. He runs on a regular basis. You know, he has an old truck, four-wheeler, a blue International Scout. They don't even make them anymore, and he likes to play around with that. And he takes his dog to the dog park. He's just a regular dude, and I think that's great. And listen to this, exactly opposite of what happened. We tried in North Carolina, and the Republicans stole it away. They overturned it. But last year, he expanded voting rights for 55,000 formerly incarcerated people. Like, why everyone doesn't, like, the whole issue of representation, taxation without equal representation is enough for me. If I work and you take money out of my paycheck for taxes, then I should have the right to say who are the elected officials that's determining what that tax rate is. To me, that just makes sense. And so it is a form of voter suppression. See, one of the things that Republicans are really good at is claiming that people are stealing elections and that there's all of this improper electing going on, improper voting going on. The issue is not that. They're doing that. It's the whole follow the shiny thing. So the shiny thing for them is people are voting twice. Most people not voting once. Think about this, people. The shiny thing is there's a lot of fraud in voting. They're saying pay attention to the shiny thing. Meanwhile, behind the back, they're suppressing the vote because they don't want you paying attention to the voter suppression, which is why he said, you know what, you're a formerly incarcerated person. You participating in society, you should be able to vote. A lot of times people, so anyway, he has met with Ukraine and signed an executive order protecting access to gender-affirming care. And so, again, it's a LGBTQ plus friendly state. But this is what I think is interesting about Tim Walz, y'all. This is James Gailliard. You're listening to the James Gailliard Show. I'm going to go ahead and look at your comments. We're going to come up on our last break. When we come back and pay this bill, we'll finish up with our final conversation about Tim Walz. We'll be right back.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Hey, barbecue lovers.
Y'all tired of eating that barbecue from up the street?
Ready for the ultimate cook-off TPT entertainment. And Choice FM 92.1 presents
Bring your big ass down.
the second annual Barbecue Festival Who Got Smoked Cook-Off. Saturday, September 7th at the Wilson County Fairground. It's the wide awake Wilson Cook-Off. Who's got the best pulled pork? Who's got the best ribs? Who's got the best brisket? You decide. It's the people's choice. Gates open at 11 a.m. and food cards are just $10. Get your teams together and call Tawana Sim 252-245-6035 or sign up online at tptentertainment.com. Vendors and food trucks welcome. Don't miss the barbecue event of the year. Be there and taste the best. Saturday, September 7th at the Wilson County Fairground, Highway 301 in Wilson.
AURN News.
I'm Ebony McMorris. The Biden-Harris administration has expanded housing access. HUD's new policy changes enable veterans with service-connected disabilities to secure more housing opportunities through the HUD VASH program. Previously, their VA benefits were counted as income, limiting their eligibility. But now these benefits are excluded, opening doors to supportive housing. HUD is also raising the income eligibility threshold for veterans to 80% of area median income, providing $20 million to public housing agencies to enhance the HUD VASH program. These changes are part of a broader effort to end veteran homelessness, building on the success of the HUD VASH program, which has helped over 200,000 veterans find permanent housing since 2010. HUD Acting Secretary Adrian Todman stated no veteran should face barriers to getting the help they deserve. These policy shifts underscore the administration's commitment to supporting veterans in need. For AURN News, I'm Ebony McMorris.
Getting ready for back to school at Macy's is all about fresh starts and new looks, making it one of summer's greatest hits. Save on must-haves like cargos, mini dresses, jeans, and more that'll hold up from the first day of school to the last. Plus, you'll find all the top quality brands you love, like Nike, Jordan, Levi's, and the all-new Epic Threads. Shop Macy's and make the first day back the best one yet. Check out Macy's.com/back to school today.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Ooh, Lord, we're around in third base, y'all. Y'all have such good comments out here. It's James Gailliard. Welcome back to the James Gailliard Show, live on every Monday on Choice 92.1 FM and on YouTube and Facebook, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., where We're talking news, sports, culture, religion, politics. And today I'm doing a deep dive on Governor Tim Walz. And let me finish with him real quick. Maybe the station will give me 5 extra minutes. We'll see. If not, they'll cut me off. It's all right. This really struck me about him, his personal finances. It's almost an anomaly in presidential politics. Listen to this. He has no investments, no bonds, no stock holdings, no real estate. As a matter of fact, he doesn't even own a home. They sold their home when he became governor. He has a limited financial portfolio. And he and his wife have a reported earning. Y'all remember when Trump would not even release his tax returns? We already have seen Governor Walz's tax returns. His 2022 tax return had him earning combined, this is a family household income, $166,000. $115,000 was his salary as governor, and his wife made $51,000 as an educator, right? I want you to compare that, and they paid $24,000 in federal income tax. So they pay more in income tax than Donald Trump probably did. And Donald Trump, won't even release tax returns. So this is a family that is not doing what they do for the money. Now, you compare that, that's the vice president, right? Compare that to J.D. Vance. And I'm not knocking people with money. But when you've got $5 million, he's got $500,000 invested in Huntington National Bank. He's got $250,000 in his Robinhood checking account. He's got CDs at Goldman Sachs with a combined range of somewhere between $500,000 and just over $1 million. He has $1 million worth of shares of QQQ Exchange Traded Fund. He's got $200,000 worth of 20-plus year Treasury bonds. This is J.D. Vance I'm talking about now. $100,000 worth of Walmart stock. The list goes on and on. Who do you really want representing you? That's really who do you really think gets the issues that you face? And what? Shout out to teachers. Let me see what some of you are saying. Everyone matters. No one matters. That's right, Judge. Correct. A lot of educators care about certain kids, socioeconomic and all. Right, LaShawn. As an educator, I'm passionate about the bottom 10%, but I care about the 100%. Thank you for that. Children are our most precious commodity. Yep. We're still preaching equality and should be preaching equity. Yeah, we need to do a whole show on that so people know the difference. I love the fact that Governor Walz is a former teacher and football coach. So do I, Alonzo. I love that as well because I love teachers. I love coaches. I love what they represent in our nation. The GOP goal is not to close the economic and educational gap. The goal is to widen. It's no question. It's no question that is the goal. Your information is so on point and essential for the general public to understand and know you need another hour. Yeah, you're right. The far right are worried about the voting suppression and people stealing elections. However, the candidate elected to represent their party in this year's election is a convicted felon. Yeah, exactly. Maybe Natasha, we'll see what the station says about giving me more time. So I just wanted to do a deep dive today on the difference in the ticket. The difference in the kind of people Kamala Harris surrounds herself with and the kind of people Donald Trump surrounds himself with, the kind of track record of Governor Tim Walz, who is just, the guy is a hunter. He just seems like a really good guy that gets what's going on in America. And you compare that with J.D. Vance and all the things that I just laid out relative to him. Listen, I'm running up on the end of my show. Let me just shout out all of the Olympians. Let me shout out all the Olympians. How did y'all feel about the Olympic Games? I'm going to go do a deep dive in this, but I want to shout out the women of the Olympic Games. The United States won 126 medals in all. That was the most of any country, so go USA. And they tied China for the highest number of gold medals. But this is what I want you to see. Of the 126 medals won by the U.S., 67 of them were won by women. I think it's outstanding. It was awesome. Some of my stars started off with gymnastics with Simone Biles and Jordan Childs and that whole crew, Suni Lee. But the women's and the men's, but particularly the women's track and field. Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone beats her own world record. Taris Davis Woodhall, her story, married to a Paralympian, her husband, the biracial couple, her husband, without legs. And it's just the stories, man, are amazing. Gabby Thomas, 3 gold medals. I mean, I think the takeaway for me, and I'm going to close my show on this in just a second, and that doesn't include, that's just me focusing on the U.S., right? That's me focusing on the U.S., but when you start looking at Pakistan getting, their first Olympic gold, you start looking at an Ethiopian runner, Sifan Hassan, even though she's Ethiopian, competing with the Netherlands, winning her gold marathon, wearing her hijab, right, while she's on center stage as the gold medalist winner. Man, the stories are phenomenal. Loving, Julianne Alfred from St. Lucia, and her victory, Sha'Carri. I mean, the list just goes on and on. The takeaways for me were I'm just not doing enough. Like, if you can go to Harvard, major in neurobiology, and become like a world-class Olympian, win gold, it's a lot. And so I read an article, and I'm going to leave you with this. They say these are the 5 things that we need to take away from what these Olympians share. Number 1 is mental resilience. I think you saw repeatedly when the games were on the line, you saw people talking to themselves. You saw people saying, you can do this. I saw Simone Biles today. You saw the track and field stars talking to themselves. You saw them in the zone, having a bad start, but then they still recover. I mean, Sha'Carri Richardson, when she did that final leg, man, she had to dig deep. I mean, they almost fumbled the baton pass with her and Gabby. So mental resilience, I want to leave you with. Number 2 is discipline. Aim for the 1% daily improvement. I mean, don't worry about making the big inroads. If you're lifting 100 pounds, the 1% improvement is that I lift 101. If I'm drinking, 100 ounces of water a day, then I just shoot for 101 ounces. So really work towards the 1% improvement. Number 3, passion and drive. And so pursue that which you really have a passion for. Pursue that which you believe you are on earth to do. Heard an awesome interview today that raised questions that were really convicting to me. I'll share it to you at another show. Number 4, be coachable. Exhibit coachability. If you notice, the best players, the best athletes in the world had coaches there with them all the way up to the end. Their coaches were right there correcting them. Y'all, if we're going to do better as a society, if we're going to do better as a nation, we need the people that can coach us, people that can correct us, people that can help us make adjustments. And then finally, number 5, attention to detail. Pay attention to the little things. Pay attention to the things that other people are not paying attention to. Whatever you're doing, if you're a school teacher, if you're an elected official, if you're a pastor, if you work on an assembly line, if you work from home, if you are a grant administrator, if you are an accountant, engineer, whatever you do for a living, you own a small business, pay attention to the details. So those are some of the takeaways from an article I read about the Olympics. On another show, we'll get into a deep dive on the Olympic Games. Look, I'm James Gailliard. You've been listening and watching the James Gailliard Show. I always circle around at the end of the day and pay attention to some of your comments. Tonight at 8 o'clock, I'm going to be leading a faith call with some other leaders around the state, faith leaders in North Carolina for Kamala Harris. That's going to be out on my social media as well. If you want to go ahead and sign up for that and jump on it, faith leaders for Kamala. Listen, I'll see you next Monday, 5 p.m. I'm out of time, but I'm not out of talk. I'm out of clock, but I'm not out of content. This is James Gailliard. You've been watching the James Gailliard Show right here on Choice 92.1 FM. Make it a great day.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
This is
WRSV, Elm City.
Turn Up.
Choice FM.